A question from Richard St. Mart, please. Richard St. Mart.
Is President Obama's ego now dictating ISAF military policy in Afghanistan?
This, of course, is the sacking or the resignation of General Stanley McChrystal. Is his ego dictating military policy, the President, because he was insulted by what McChrystal said? Peter Hitchens.
No, I don't think so. I think it's quite reasonable for a president to fire a general who's critical of him. You have to have, in a democratic, lawful country, you have to have the politicians in charge of the generals. And if they allow themselves to be put in this ridiculous position... Did the Duke of Wellington have Rolling Stone following him around for months, interviewing all his aides during the Napoleonic Wars? Did General Montgomery have Rolling Stone following him around, interviewing his aides? No, it's not a serious thing for General McChrystal to have done. And he deserves to be fired for it in the fine old tradition of American democracy that fired General MacArthur. But I think the real problem here is that this arose because of the general stupidity of the Afghan war and the fact that nobody understands what it's for, why the troops are there, what victory would look like, how to get them out, and the contempt which the general showed for the president was actually a symptom of this confusion at the top of all the countries involved in the Afghan war about why we're there, and again this inability to explain to the public why we're there, this inability also to explain to anybody why so many soldiers are being killed there. And
I think
that is the real issue behind it all.
The general actually seemed to be very clear about why he was there, so I'm not sure it's a symptom of that. I think he was absolutely, he had a purpose, he'd helped design the strategy. The problem is, you're right in one sense, he was apparently a very good, accomplished general who knew everything that he was doing. The problem is he was a maverick, he was a special ops guy who had a different sort of character, and when it came out, he wasn't very nuanced. And the transparency, what happened is that the transparency that he gave of the inner arguments that they had, which he gave through Rolling Stone, was something that it gave Obama no choice. He had to fire him.
It wasn't his ego, then? It wasn't the president's ego, or the president under attack?
The president had to be presidential.
And therefore sort of vulnerable and needing to show a bit of chutzpah.
No, I know people have said it's a sort of strange act of forcefulness. So this time he's actually shown he's forceful, which is great. But no, I think actually when you have conflict resolution, again, is great if you do it in private. But when you're actually, I think, impacting the strategy, our strategy in Afghanistan negatively by weakening our negotiating position in the end with the Taliban, by exposing our weaknesses, you are not doing the job of a general.
Okay, Caroline Lucas?
Well, I don't think it was his ego necessarily. I think it was really a sign of some weakness in a sense, because I think he had to try to look as if he was being tough, precisely because there is so much division about the Afghanistan policy in the US and elsewhere. So I don't think he could brook the idea that people might think he's being weak on this. So that's why the guy had to go. When he did sack him, he said this isn't a change of policy, it's only a change of personnel. And I think there are a lot of people out there who think maybe a change of policy would be more important.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I mean, I want to say, first of all, that I have a huge amount of respect, and who wouldn't, for the incredible job that our troops are doing out in Afghanistan. It's almost, unthinkable, the kinds of risks they're having to run and what they do for this country, and I absolutely applaud them for that. But having said that, I think it's right to ask the question, particularly we've just had one of the most bloody weeks out there. We've just seen now over 300 UK soldiers killed, and I don't know how many Afghans. I don't seem to count anymore. But I think at this point it is right to say, is there a military solution? Do we really believe there is a military solution to the crisis in Afghanistan? And I don't think there is. Even the military people are saying, sooner or later we're going to have to sit down with the Taliban and try to find a resolution to this. Well, why don't we do it sooner and save more lives and bring our troops home?
Because don't we need to negotiate from a position of strength? And that's the thing, is right now, you're right, we're not in our strongest position.
But I don't think we're going to get stronger, because the trouble is the more that you kill people, the more you build more enemies who then get more angry.
Well, the policy now is not one of killing people. The policy they have now, the coalition has, is not one of killing people. It is one of engagement. And one of General McChrystal's absolute targets was one of engaging with the Afghan population, taking risks. Our soldiers are taking risks, so let's not forget it, to get in with the local population.
The kinds of insurgency that it is when the Taliban are so clever at being able to intermingle with civilians, then it is extraordinarily difficult to be able to pick them out. And it's almost impossible, and therefore you do kill civilians.
Let's go back to the question of McChrystal. The person up there in the second row from the back. Yes.
I agree with Caroline, and I'm seeing a bit of a parallel with the football this week. So maybe Obama should have taken the Capello approach and slapped him on the wrist and moved along, because it's good to have some sort of disagreement. It shows that there's different modes of thinking within an organisation.
He should have worn it, in other words.
Yeah.
Yes, and you, sir?
Would people on the panel see a parallel between the position we were in Iraq a couple of years ago, where it looked hopeless, but actually we found a way to essentially win that war despite all the internal divisions in the military and the political classes
Vince
back
Cable?
then?
Well, it's a fundamentally different war. I mean, the Iraq war was fundamentally illegal. It was wrong. We shouldn't have been there. The Afghan intervention was quite different. It was supported across the board internationally. I mean, it's quite true, as Peter said, that for some years there was a complete state of drift. All kind of motives were being advanced for keeping an army in Afghanistan. I mean, one of the things we should be indebted to Obama for, and let's just say in parallel, he's not just the president, he's the commander-in-chief of the American forces. He had to act in this case. But one of the things we should be indebted to Obama for, he has set out a strategy for dealing with this problem now. He doesn't expect that the American, British and other forces can win this war in some military sense, like the Second World War, the Falklands. Not that kind of war. What they're trying to do is to establish basic security, prevent the terrorist groups reoccupying it, training up the army, and he's set a time frame for the orderly withdrawal of troops from that country, so that we don't have to have our brave troops continuing to be killed.